calmly walking down the road and a rabbit hole catches you. Gone. 3 hours later, you wake up, you have no idea how you got there, why you just researched how, how octopus think, or something weird. Like,
Good, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 165, and we're going to talk about some day trip ideas or day trip adventures. And anybody that joined us right as we still came in, I know you're probably dying of interest what we were giggling about, and just how we're both a little squirrel-minded. We dive down rabbit holes. I think it's a trait of a bushcrafter, honestly. You just get not so much distracted, interested in something, and you, as I guess common for us, you got to see it through. There's no time like the present. But
yeah, we both definitely suffer from that rabbit hole lifestyle. So we think of something, we go down that path, and then we end up somewhere else and somewhere else. And then we, like I said, hours later, we kind of wake up realizing that we've been just chasing things for hours and have no idea how we ended up on the subject we're at.
very common occurrence.
Anyways,
Yeah.
yes,
Sorry. Go ahead.
back, focus. Day tripping. So I guess the inspiration for this is I started thinking about the stuff we do, and a lot of it has to do with the long trips and the big trips and sleep systems or shelters. But bushcrafting isn't necessarily about long trips. It's the length of the trip is basically irrelevant. It's about what you're doing when you're out there. And I think my fear was that maybe we're making some people nervous about, I got to do like multi-day trips to be a bushcrafter. No, you can be a bushcrafter and do 1 hour trips. Like, this is doable. So what's a short thing? What's something you can do in a day? You wake up one day, it's Saturday, you got nothing else to do. You say, I want to do something in my bushcrafting hobby. So what can you do? And there is a ton of stuff you can do. And we're easily going to be able to fill an hour. That being said, we could easily do an hour on how to drink water. So this is going to be a challenge for us.
So, yeah, it's a real good point. And funny enough, in the presentation that I did there with my oldest kid, that's one of the main things that I said. So it's kind of funny how that was my main point off that presentation I did, and it's kind of rolling over to here. So, but yeah, there is a ton of things that you can do that are day trips. Honestly, a lot of stuff that Ben and I do while we're out there would be considered day trips. It's only, I mean, we probably go into the woods and have a camp more often than the normal person. Yeah, but that's our choice. A lot of what we do to fill the in between time is we go out and do day tripping. And something I like to do, if I can get the ball rolling here, is I have a truck. We've talked about this in the past. Sometimes I just bomb down old roads. See what's down the path on travel. Go down old roads, take a look, find some neat areas, stop, get out, do a little bit of exploring, but I'm never more than, 100 meters from the truck.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the bare bones beginning ones, is just exploring in general. And there's a ton of ways to do it. You can research where what do you want to explore for? Are you exploring for rivers, lakes, just camping spots, looking for plants, animals, rocks? It doesn't matter. Like, if you have something that gets you out there, gets you exploring, that's your thing. So exploring's a great one. And I got a buddy who's into hunting. He looks for good hunting spots. And his favorite little thing to do is he goes on Google Maps, goes onto the satellite view, and just looks for clearings and stuff. And his goal is for hunting, and that's where he kind of tells me about stuff he finds. He's like, man, I thought it was going to be a great spot to get back there. It was useless for hunting, but I seen this river, and I seen this, and I seen that, and I seen this. I'm like, wow, sounds like an awesome trip, right? And it's that simple. Like, find something that looks a little different, a little odd. Go look for it. See if you can get to it. And it's amazing what you're going to find and discover when you're out there. And so just in general, exploring. A great bushcrafting activity. And when you're doing that, you can really hone a couple of other skills. And one of my favorite skills to talk about honing is just your navigation skills. So take yourself a map and compass, take yourself a GPS, and practice with those tools. And that's going to help you when you're doing other trips. If you ever do want to get into longer trips, um, to hone those skills. And so, you mix in those two together, but map and compass and GPS skills never get old. It's something you can practice time and time again. I'm into search and rescue. We practice them all the times. It's because they're essential to being able to do a lot of stuff in the woods. If you can't know where you are and know where you're going, you potentially have a problem. You can walk marked trails and you'll be fine, but going off the trails, that's where you really discover the new and interesting things. So,
Map and compass and GPS. It's definitely that skill set that you do have to practice it probably more often than most of your other skills. It's one of those, it's very easy to lose enough of the basics, especially with map and compass, that it would become difficult for you if you relied upon it and you hadn't touched it in a little while. GPS is a little bit more forgiving. Technologically based things, generally people get a knack for those, and menus are fairly easy to navigate, and you can kind of, fumble your way through it to get what you need to do. Maybe not the best way, but you will figure it out. Map and compass, you don't have that luxury. If you don't know your declinations and how to take bearings, how to offset, stuff like that, and it gets so easy to forget it.
yeah,
That could really put you in a bad situation if you have to rely on that map and compass simply because maybe your GPS batteries died, you're in a low lying area where you're not getting satellite reception. If it's your phone, same deal. All the things that apply to a GPS will apply to a phone. Not that they're great tool, or not that they are not great tools. They just, they have little quirks, same as a map, a compass does. You get around some iron deposits, compass isn't 100% accurate. You get into like a low lying canyon, GPS phones don't get the best reception.
yeah, it's true. Um, and I honestly, it's those are both skills that the more you do, the better you're going to get at it. And if you ever did depend on it, um, orienteering is a great one. Geocaching, another one that kind of related to it. But figuring out distances, one of the hardest things that I find, you know, skilled bushcrafters think, oh, I know distances. Surprisingly, they don't. They're like, yeah, I walked 2 kilometers, and you check, and they know they walk like 5 or 1. yeah,
Yeah, it's usually extremes. It's never,
yeah,
a little over, a little under. It's usually pretty big extremes.
yeah.
And if you want a real life sample of this, take a chair into a field or your backyard or something like that. And I see this in archery, and I'm sure you're going to follow right along with this. Set your targets or whatever out so much, walk back and go, oh, I think that's this distance. Then pace it off and see how much it was. Especially with archery with me, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's definitely 20 yards. You know what I mean? That seems like 20 yards pretty good. Find out it's either like 15 or 35, which sounds pretty close, but for archery, those are big differences. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So learning to practice that, judge that, learning to pace, just your paces. Um, it's easy enough to walk down the road in front of your house and say, yeah, I got an exact pace of 33 inches. And, buddy, maybe you do. Try walking through brush and tell me that you still have an average pace of 33 inches. You're going to find that it varies quite a bit. And some people in the woods always take a bigger step, and some people take a lot of smaller steps. And it has to do with confidence, skill, knowledge, and your mindset. And if you're like really paying attention to the environment around you, you'll shorten your steps and you're going to slow down. If you're powering through, you're going to lengthen those steps and try to avoid rocks and stuff, and you're going to take these big steps. And it takes a lot to really understand what your average pace is and look at different terrains and different things, and just how tired you are. Your paces will get smaller, in my experience, when you're
Mm-hmm.
tired.
You'll start short stepping for sure, especially if you're hauling a little bit of weight on top of being tired, because now you want to bring that center of balance in closer to you, give you a little
Yeah,
more stability that you may be lacking because of the exhaustion that's setting in. A great place to figure this stuff out, day trip idea, local park, a local day park, go for a walk. Most of the trails and stuff, they're going to be measured. You know the measurement off it. It is a little bit involved, but walk it, count your paces, figure it out, do your division. That'll give you an average over multiple terrain because, like Ben said, brush and stuff is going to definitely set it off. Other things is going to be inclines, slopes, stuff like that. That's going to change your pace. So you're still going to be on a flat surface unless you can find one with a natural trail. One I recommend is Taylor Head. They're all natural trails. You're going to be going over brush, roots. There's some nice cliff walks, stuff like that along there. You can really get a good idea of what your average pace is by simply taking the distance, count your paces, which is going to be a fairly high number. It's going to take dedication to do this to some degree, and then just divide your paces by your distance, and you'll get your average distance per pace. You know what I mean? Some
Yeah.
simple math, and then you have a decent baseline, which is actually a better sampling than simply putting out a meter stick and, you know, stepping over it a half a dozen times to see where you fall into it. Because I get a lot of people that's how they set their pace. They mark off a meter and just see where they fall into a single step. And the problem with stuff like that, once again, as Ben said, you're usually going to overstep in. It's human nature. You're going to try and take that little bigger step and just be like, oh yeah, I know I can do this, which is you probably can for the first kilometer. Then the second kilometer slows down, and I can guarantee you the seventh kilometer is way less than that.
Yeah. So yeah, figure that's a great skill to practice. It's an awesome bushcrafting skill. Navigation, it's kind of essential to all the other skills you're going to come across later, because the more time you spend in the woods, the more likely you are to potentially get yourself into a place where, due to overconfidence or whatever, you end up injured or lost, and that navigation skill can really help you get out. And to me, the more you're prepared for it, the less likely it is to happen. I don't know why that is, but does seem to be a truth statement. Here's another one. Identification. Now,
identification in general, you mean?
In general, there's dozens of things you can identify. Birds. If you want to get into bird watching, just identifying different birds, different animals, different vegetation, plants, food, flowers, fungus. Those are all good. Tracks. Go out and identify different tracks and other things you find in the woods. Just choose a subject. It doesn't matter what the subject is, but something you're trying to identify. Me and Robert have done this one, even just identifying different trees. And you think, yeah, funny, right? Yes, edible medical.
I don't know if that's coming through the right way, but that's the Field Guide to North American Mammals. I literally had all three books sitting on my desk because I have been looking at them over the last few days.
Yeah. And I have similar books. They're not within reach here now, but I have similar books that I use all the time. And then every now and then somebody will say something about an animal or a plant. And I'm like, do I know that plant? I should know that plant. I'll go pull the book out. Like, oh yeah, it's also known this, and that's what I'm familiar with it as. Or I've seen those. I just didn't realize what they were. And then I've been interested and try to remember where have I seen them. So plants to me is a really good one. Fungus is a really good one. Animals is a great one. So there's so many things you can do. And it's just the more you can understand and identify, and the more picture you build in your house of what that means, it usually spreads. You learn that this plant's usually found around this plant, or these plants are found in this area. And then when you get there, you realize, well, when I'm in that area, I often find this type of. Am I still there?
Oh, did I shut you down somehow? Oh, I know what I did. Hold on. There you go. You should be back. Sorry, I actually have a website, and I was trying for plant identification, which is great for Eastern Canada. Sorry, I blocked you out there. I was trying to bring it up so I can make reference to it.
Okay, no. But yeah, you broke my chain.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, learning to identify these things and where they're to and what builds you that better picture, so that later on when you're trying to locate animals, plants, things like that, you're going to know when you're walking through the woods, like, this is where I might find chaga, or this is where I might find this particular flower, or this type of bird, or it really does help. And the more skill you build into that, the more you can use that towards your bushcraft.
So if all went well, this should come up. Of course it won't. Give me 2 seconds here.
2 seconds.
Nope, that's not what I want. I need, and I apologize for everybody that's kind of going here. This was not pre-planned, so You know what? I'm just going to switch back to the main. That way nobody's looking at what I'm doing. Not that you got folks can't. It's just boring stuff, to be perfectly honest.
But again, and the other one that I've tried quite a bit, and there was actually a guy on Facebook for a while who was doing a challenge where he'd take a picture of a track and see if people could identify what it was. Um, just track identification. Another one I've seen people do is scat identification. Just, can you identify different animals just by their droppings? Uh, and deer, moose, caribou, all those things are very difficult, are different, not difficult. They're different. They're very easy to identify. Fox, I find generally pretty easy to identify.
There we go. All right, I got the web page up. If I can interject for 2 seconds there, Ben, just so I can hammer this out.
Go
Uh,
ahead.
so what this is called is, and you may know about this too, it's called northernbushcraft.com. I can only get so much of the website to come up for whatever reason. It's causing
I
me
think you've
issues back
mentioned this
here.
to me before.
But yeah, it's northernbushcraft.com. It does have berries, plants, and mushrooms from the provinces. You can pick them out. I find the plant section's really good for Nova Scotia. Is it showing enough of it there? No, of course not. Give me a
Yeah, and I have
second.
one of those books there, the second one.
I have the first one, which is funny enough. Uh, anyway, you folks will have to take my word on this. I don't know why this is being so difficult tonight, but it's definitely a great website. It's northernbushcraft.com. It's got some great pictures of stuff there, and if once you click on it, like I just happened to be clicking on arrowhead, it'll give you pictures, and then it'll give you things to look for that plant. And once again, this is just a reference guide. Take it with a grain of salt. Some of these are going to say they're edible. Once again, know the risk before you start sampling stuff based on a website. But it's actually pretty accurate, to be perfectly honest. It's a good website. There's a lot of good information on there. Definitely to get you going. Costs nothing. Go on, just snap some pictures with your phone, bring them back, and great way to play. This is how I've got a couple people into plant identification to, a basic degree. They had some common stuff around their places, took pictures off it, brought them back to this. They figured it out, and off they went.
Yeah. But I mean, I think this is like just overall identification. I mean, we've mentioned quite a few things that you can do while you're out there. But me and you both actively work on this skill um, pretty well across the board.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you agree?
no, 100%. Once again, I had those books literally sitting beside me because I had been doing reference to them. And it's one of the things that interests me out in the woods. I picked it up later. It wasn't one of the main things for me going out and doing woodsy things. But it definitely became a larger part of it, especially as I got older and I got more interested in what was going on around me. I wanted to know what the trees were because once you know what the trees are, you can kind of know how the environment around you is going to work, what to expect there, if it's going to be swampy, if it's going to be dry, different trees grow in different environments. And it's really interesting to build up your repertoire on that stuff. Information's cheap, and
Yeah.
you can carry it with you.
Yeah. The more you know what a certain plant is good for and does, I mean, it's just a great skill. And honestly, the newest beginner who spends a few hours at this, it's not long he can impress the best woodsman out there because most of the best woodsmen I know can't identify more than a few dozen trees and a few dozen plants. Like, it's surprising. The ones they know, they'll know pretty good, but you can usually show like a more obscure one, and if you can identify that, they're going to be impressed. They're like, this guy knows what he's doing. It doesn't take much. Uh,
And that's true
Animal
for
stands
anything,
are another
not
one.
just trees.
What?
That I said that's true for all of them, much like you said, not just trees. That's just happened to be the one that drugged me in.
Yeah,
Later on, I looked at plants and then animals.
yeah. So a great skill to have, easy to learn, difficult to master. Um, it is a lifetime pursuit to really identify different types of trees and stuff and plants and animals. But the more you do, the better you get. It actually does get progressively easier.
You don't have the
Someone say
comments up, do you?
no.
Nah, you can read them later. Next.
Somebody give me digs or what?
Oh yeah, Gary's picking at you. Um,
Oh, Gary. Gary's good.
let's see. So yeah, that's a great reason to get out there, and we've talked about it but haven't really named it. Just practice your skills. There's nothing like going to the backyard and practicing skills or learning a new one. I learned to do a bow drill literally outside in the comfort of my sunroom. You know what I mean? Nice airy spot, completely covered over, no rain. So even when it was raining, I could fiddle with stuff and I was still comfortable. I learned a good deal of my skills just practicing at home.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So day trip idea, by far identification. Choose your subject, work at it. I've heard one person say if you want to learn to identify a plant, choose one or two a year. And I did learn to identify it every day of the year because it looks different in the spring than in summer, than in fall, and even in the winter. If you know what you're looking for, you can oftentimes identify plants, and it's good if you, especially if the roots are harvestable, to be able to identify them in the off season, where you can find and where you would dig to get them, stuff like that. So just a great overall skill. Um, do you want to bring up the next potential?
Yeah, so one that I had, and it's kind of exploring again, but a suggestion for exploring, especially our neck of the woods, waterfalls. There's tons of those on Google Maps. You can punch them in, and a lot of those are day trip adventures. You may have to drive a little ways, but then it's just you park somewhere, you can walk in, see some really nice waterfalls, walk back out, and day trip done. Sometimes you don't even have to go in with a bag. You can go in with a bottle of water, and you could be okay. Generally, I bring a little more than that because you know me, but the potential's there. You know what I mean? I know some waterfalls here in Nova Scotia that are less than 10 minutes off the trail.
Oh yeah, plenty of them. Um, and you know what goes really well with that one?
What's that?
Picnics.
Picnics. Well, that's why I generally bring a little bit more. If I go through the effort of going to a waterfall, be it however far off the trail, chances are I'm going to sit down and make a cup of tea there.
Yeah.
It's just nice
Um,
to sit and absorb.
Yeah, so if you're going out and doing stuff like, meal prep, just like make different meals and things and learning to eat them in the woods. So if you're making dehydrated meals, if you're trying something different, you want to see what works, you can really kind of get the idea of serving sizes and stuff better when you're doing it. So pack these meals, take them out for the day trip, and you can really practice them. And then when you're into the bigger trips, you can better identify how much food you need to take and how much work it is to cook these meals. Sometimes people over or underestimate and they think, oh, there's no way I could do that in the woods. It's too much work. But do it on a day trip, and you might find out that you can bake a cake in the middle of the woods. It's not that hard. Or
We
you may
fried a
find
turkey,
it
bud.
can't make it through an episode.
Not an episode. I had to figure out a way to get it in here.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, different meal prep ideas. It's an easy one to do, honestly, and it's a great one to do because if you can get good at making meals and stuff in the woods, again, impress your bushcrafting buddies. Just have a better meal than him.
I can vouch for that one. 100% changed the way I looked at food in the woods. And we've talked about this in the past, so I won't beat a dead horse. But
No.
yeah, eat good in the woods because you can do it. There's no reason not to.
No. And honestly, again, if you're trying to impress somebody, identify a few plants and things that they can't and cook up a good meal, all of a sudden you can convince anyone you're the best bushcrafter in the world. Those simple skills go a long way and they can garner you a lot of respect very easily. Trust me on this one.
So just rolling off your idea there, Ben, uh, you can do dry runs
Oh
much
yeah.
to make day adventures. So what I learned, or something that I've been doing, is well, I say recently, but I guess it's been a couple of years now. I bought a four wheeler. First time I owned one. I've been around them and used them for work and stuff like that. I wasn't completely oblivious to them, but I didn't know how much gear I could put on the bike and what would be the relevant bike to take, or sorry, the relevant gear to take on the bike. So sometimes when I'm just going out for a drive, I do have the Nova Scotia Trail System just literally behind my house, so I'm blessed with that. But I'll throw what I think would be a night trip worth of gear on the bike and drive somewhere and just set it up. No intention of staying there the night, but make sure the tent still works. It didn't get wet on the drive in or tore up with the trees, or I made sure everything was packed on there, or find out, oh, I really wish I could have brought this because it would do something great with the bike. Like if I take the bike, I can bring an air mattress because one, I hate blowing an air mattress up by lung. I don't care what size it is. But with the ATV, I have the ability to bring a small pump and it will plug into the accessory port. So that's something I learned after the fact. I brought
Yeah.
my just my normal bed pad and stuff like that and went out to have a set up, and I'm like, I could put the air mattress on the bike, but I don't want to blow it up. Oh yeah, accessory port, and you just snowball and you'll find gear that you won't take any other time than specifically with the ATV, for instance, or if you're going to be going close to the car, or if whatever reason that trip happens to fall into the confines of your testing plot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, dry runs and just general any product testing. That's the time to do it on a day trip when you're not depending on it to get you through 4 or 5 days. Um,
I'm just reading a comment here. Chris Lovelace, with the huge increase in price of pre-made dehydrated food, making your own dehydrated food is essential. We're talking $4 to $5 US savings per meal making your own, which is
oh
totally
yeah,
true, easily.
you can easily pay for your dehydrator in months if you do.
Or less. I think the first time I did a massive batch of beef jerky, I paid for mine. I made
Yeah,
something crazy though, like 7 or 8 pounds of beef jerky. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it was great. I learned a lot about what to do with a dehydrator, not what to do with a dehydrator.
yeah. It's a great school. But yeah, just general prep. We always preach that. I think we've preached it since day one. Test your gear and stuff. So take your water purifier, take your sleeping system, and how hard is it to blow it up in the woods, or how hard is it to set up the hammock? Just learning to do that. So the time you're actually going out to do it for real, you already have a really confident feel that you know how to do it, how it's going to carry, how hard is it to get it in and out of my pack when I'm going. Get an idea of what a pack can do. So every piece of your gear should be tested regularly. That's a great way to do it, just to do the day trips. And people say, "Oh, I don't have time for a big trip." No, but you always have time don't have time for a 4 or 5 day trip, but you do have time for 1 2 day trip. And those 1 day trips, those day trips on a weekend, you can take the kids, you can take your friend that you're going to meet, and do something exciting with them, and practice some of these skills and stuff. Um,
You know what a real good one is that I just thought of a few minutes ago and I want to bring up because this is kind of today's day and age. It's happening more and more. Chaga hunting. I literally have friends. That's their that's their woods time. They just go chaga hunting for the day. They'll bring some stuff. They'll make a meal in the woods. They'll have a cup of tea in the woods, but they're just out looking for chaga. They're going to harvest it, bring it back, either sell it or keep it for themselves. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, that's a great one. I mean, it's the same thing with any of this. It's kind of like a plant identification, identifying chaga, identifying where it's to, and then making trips to go get it. It's a great excuse to get out. So far we've covered just overall exploring. We've covered identification of things, um, GPS mapping, uh, testing of gear, um, fire making. We haven't talked about fire making yet.
Boil ups. That's your term there. Prime reason to get out in the woods for a day trip.
Oh yeah, boil up, right? But learning to get a good fire so you can do a boil up, so you can do a meal prep, and learning, building that skill, because anyone can make a fire when you have everything there and you don't need to. Um, in fact, it seems like it's overly easy to start a fire sometimes, but when you need to depend on it for a meal, for heat in the woods, that seems to be the time. There's no dry tinder, there's no small branches, everything's out of reach. So if every time you did a day trip, you just prepared, even if you pre-built a fire and didn't light it, just to get the muscle memory and the knowledge of how to kind of put one together. It's
That
great
also gives
practice.
you the realistic expectation of time when it comes to building
Yeah.
a fire, even if you don't light it in different environments. If it's a little damp, now you realize it takes a significant amount of time to get yourself some dry material. So a couple of comments off the side here. Red Bear, day trips are a great way to expose young kids to the outdoors without making them uncomfortable. Excellent suggestion there, Red Bears, and that's 100% true. Most kids, they don't like going overnight the first couple times. There's, creepy crawlies, spooky sounds, away from home. Day trips, great way to start introducing them to the woods. Find something that they enjoy. Once again, tree identification, plant identification, animal identification, insect identification. These are all things that kids will generally have some sort of interest in one of the fields that will grab at them and give them a reason that they want to get back out there again. You should never force your kids out in the woods, don't misunderstand, but if you can find something that they're interested in and keep that interest alive, it's going to go a lot further for you.
Oh, for sure. Um, I had a great one. I let it go again. Oh, carving.
Carving and whittling. 100% great. And man, the knife skills that you learn with that. And everybody really underestimates the importance of knife skills.
Well, not me or you, but I think every trip you've ever been at with me or I've ever been at with you, we've always pulled out a new knife and in practice with them while we're out there, or a new skill. I mean, you had your carving kit. I've had my little carving folding knife. Now I have a carving kit. We've always had different knives, and it's always, especially get a couple of buddies, like challenge each other. Who can do the coolest walking stick, or who can make the most intricate piece of material, or just who can set the best deadfall trap. Like practicing making one of those, awesome fun.
Well, I
What do
think
you need?
the first time you and I went out, that was your first experience with a Figure 4 deadfall, and we had a ton of fun making them.
Oh yeah,
But,
yeah. And I've since done them. Like I always read the description of how to do it, and I think I always knew about 99% of how to do it. But physically seeing one done right made all the difference. It made the last couple of things in my head click. I'm like, okay, I got it now. And I love doing it. And I practiced the cuts for years. I've always done them and just never put it together in the right way. So experiment with that. You can learn how to make it like hair trigger will take basically a hurricane and knock it over.
different
And
applications for different reasons.
yeah, it doesn't take much difference in how you cut it to make it where it's a very solid support to where it's a very loose support and it'll let go really quickly. And learning that skill is great. One of your favorite things that we've ever carved was a
Whistle. Still have a
whistle.
ton of fun with that.
This is the time of year to do it.
I know.
The
I
bud.
just got one made the other day. I was walking out back the woods and I found a piece of alder. I did not put it in my mouth. I took it home, threw it in a bucket of water, and then tapped it. Came out great. Gave it to Lily. She wrecked it, but yeah.
Great skill, and honestly, impresses most kids totally. They love it. You give them a little wooden whistle that you carved out after, and you can do it in a few minutes if you know what you're doing. Uh, Always a lot of fun. So, learn a few carving skills. Easy enough to impress someone with. And every time you do that, you build one of those skills, and you're confident you can do it. You build your own confidence level. You feel better about yourself, and you're actually going to notice a difference of how people treat you. Because when you feel good and you're confident, people see that, they're going to react that way. And it's just some life advice here.
Confidence
But
is contagious.
oh,
You know what I
it
mean?
is. And this is an easy way to do it. Get your confidence out in the woods, and then when you're going out, you're just going to feel much better about it. So, I mean, we've covered a plethora of things already.
Red Bear had a good one here that I was going to bring up. I was just waiting for a good time. He said panning for gold. And I actually know a couple people that do that. Somebody I used to work with, that's her pastime. She lives next to an old retired gold mine. She goes out, she pans a little bit. I think she's made a little bit off it. Don't get me wrong. Hasn't gotten rich, but she has made something.
I know a guy who's panned enough to make his own wedding rings.
Well, there you go. See, like, she's only been at it for a couple months. She's found a couple flakes or whatever. But I mean, with a little bit of knowledge, it's a great pastime to get out there. And much like bushcrafting, you can get into it as much or as little as you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, mineral or just different rock geology, different types of geology. You can learn so much with that. I mean, it's a great skill. It's great fun. I highly recommend anyone who wants to get into it does it. Doesn't take that much, and honestly, it doesn't have to cost much. You can do a lot of the stuff for dirt cheap.
You know what a good pastime of mine is, and this is one of the things I do when I get out. And some people may laugh at me, some people may think it's a great idea. I just go out playing with rocks to see if they'll throw a spark. Literally, just break a piece of file off, put it in my pocket, walk around places I haven't been before, and just start grabbing stones and cracking them, and hitting them with the file, and see if I get something that throws a spark, and then look for characteristics of that rock. Where did I find it? How's it reacting? Is it a decent spark? I've gotten sparks off rocks that I know weren't chert and stuff or quartz, but they were obviously hard enough to scrape iron. You know what I mean? Maybe not going to get repeated uses out of them, but good information to know if I ever was way in the woods and I found one of those rocks and I really needed a fire going.
Oh yeah, no, good. That's a good one. Um, we haven't mentioned this one yet. Gary's here, so I think we should have fishing.
Fishing. Fishing, hunting, boating in general, all great reasons to get out there. Canoeing and kayaking seems to be huge this year, at least here in my area. Canadian Tire, the local one, brought in something ridiculous like 30 kayaks, and I think there's two left.
Oh man, last couple of years since COVID, they cannot. Nobody can keep canoes and kayaks in stock. And if you have them, you want to get rid of them. It's dirt easy. Um, I don't tend to ever want to get rid of mine, but I have a few. I've thought about it, and there's already a line of people I know who will take one if I go to sell it. So,
I'm on the
uh,
short list. I hope. But
but no,
no,
that's one of those things. Like get out there boating and fishing. It's great. I'm right near the Shuby River right now, and this is the time of year throw a canoe in it, paddle the river, and you can see the striped bass come up, the Chad, the Gaspro. I mean, that river has a ton of cool fish coming up through it.
yeah,
And
no, for sure.
hours.
I'm not a. I've never actually fished the Shuby River or boated on it, but which is funny because I used to work not too far from it. Uh, but I know a
What are you
lot of
doing the
people.
next?
What's that?
What are you doing the next few months?
I'm hoping to do some bass fishing this year, and Shuby River is one of the places I want to hit up. I know some people have pulled out some real nice bass from that river. I did get bass fishing last year. I just did it off Big Island. We got one bass. But I know river fishing's different than ocean fishing, so I got to look
Pe-
at the regulations and figure it all out. But I definitely want to try and get out and do it.
People are pulling them out right now. I've seen some pictures.
I
So
drove, well, this weekend I drove right by there and I seen them on the shore.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
So it's happening. Now's the time. Um, but that's a great one, and it's always a lot of fun, and it is dirt easy now. You can go to Amazon, buy a little collapsible fishing rod, throw in your back pocket. Literally, you can get them to fit in your pocket and go. And it's nutting, fishing license, some line, a small reel, and you can fish every little stream, brook. Just follow the rules. Streams, brooks, lakes, ponds, rivers, side of the ocean, and you can catch all kinds of interesting things. Um,
yeah,
highly
definitely for
recommend.
sure. I intend to get back into fishing more this year. I've gotten away from it in previous years, probably the last 5 to 7 years. Real slack on fishing. I want to hit it hard this year. I made a conscious effort to try and have a couple weekends off over the summer where I can just get out and do some woods time. Couple comments here just before we keep going through. We have Carl. Favorite day trip is just going out on his land there and cooking some lunch over a fire, even if it's just ramen and veggies. And we talked about that, just going out and having cook ups or boil ups, practicing a little of your fire making, just having some good food in the woods. Food always tastes better in the woods. I don't care what anyone says. It could be the same pack of ramen noodles, and it's going to be 100 times better sitting out by a campfire. Um, Terra Scout Adventures, metal detecting. We hadn't thought of this one, or maybe Ben had. I hadn't mentioned it. I actually have a metal detector. Uh, that is actually a really fun pastime. I bought the metal detector to look for arrowheads, my own arrowheads when I was learning archery. And then since my mother found her wedding ring with it, I found like property pins. It's come in handy quite a few times, and you can have a lot of fun with it.
I don't have one. We did buy one a few years for Christmas. My daughter didn't really fall in love with it. It didn't quite work the way we wanted. We should have bought maybe a bit better one. Um, and yes, no, it's a great hobby. A lot of people have a lot of fun with it. The other interesting one is you ever do magnet fishing?
Not to the YouTube level of stuff. Like I've put a small magnet on and seen what it would stick to, but I haven't actually taken anything in to be honest with you.
Well, some guys just dredge rivers, just throw a big magnet in the river and drag it up and down a few times, and it's surprising what they pull out. Um, and sometimes not surprising when you think of it, the area they're in and what they're getting is makes sense. But especially busy roads and stuff, they're pulling out wallets, knives, keys, jewelry, you name it gets pulled up, right?
Not kind of with our topic, not really with our topic. One of the favorite things I used to do as an older teenager down home, Marigamish, where I grew up, it was real big first day of fishing season. You know what I mean? Everybody
Yeah,
went to this specific bridge, and if you're from the area, you'll know the bridge I mean in Marigamish. And there would be hundreds of people there. Since I went past on the first day of fishing season, there might have been like 25 people there. So the numbers really have gone down. But what you do is you wait until the water gets warm enough to swim, throw on some snorkeling gear, and you can just clean house on fishing gear that gets caught under that bridge because there's old dead trees under there. There's an old bridge under there. Man, you can clean up on some real nice gear, which the magna fishing kind of reminded me of. But once
yeah,
again, if you know these fishing holes where big groups of people get to, once the water gets warmer, grab some snorkeling gear and you'll be surprised what you find. I found knives, like Ben said, but generally like tons of lures, leaders, lines, just random rods that for whatever reason end up in the river, either for maybe bad sportsmanship or whatever. But you'll find some interesting things, literally just
yeah.
diving around or magnet fishing.
Oh, for sure. Uh,
I'm
just
not.
trying to think of other ones. Just get out there and practice other just general skills, not tying.
Somebody did request a episode on ropes and knots again. I think it was last week. We are going to try and do something for there if you're listening again.
Yeah,
Red Bear just happened to throw here. Not sure about Nova Scotia, but in BC, they can go out in Crayon Land and practice shooting. Um, there's rules and regulations in Nova Scotia. Just check into them before you attempt such. You can, depending on the time of year, what you bring out, how far away from things you are. The general easier way to do it in Nova Scotia, just grab one of the public ranges.
yeah.
Keeps you out of a lot of trouble. But if you are in a place where that's readily available and easy to do, I could totally see it in BC. Great reason to get out there. Stump shooting with the bow. That we're allowed to do here real nice, and that's a ton of fun just to get out and go exploring through the woods. You can practice your tracking or your track identification, sorry, is what I'm trying to get out, or just recognizing game trails, or realizing how much weight it is to carry your bow and a bunch of stuff in the woods. You know what I mean?
Red Bear, you need to contact me about what you can do in BC. Just saying. Ah, but yeah, and another good skill, just getting out there and practicing, just your general skills, any skill that you would potentially use, do it in a day trip. Go out with a plan to do it. And I think, we've listed a whole bunch of things, and we could still talk more. There's a ton of things to do when you're getting out there. Uh, Gathering of plants, we didn't really get into, but growing up, one of the earliest bushcraft things I ever did was blueberry picking. Going into the woods and getting blueberries, raspberries, partridge berries, um, blackberries, you name it. It was always a big thing for us.
Service
Uh,
berries was big here. We
yeah,
always called them sugar berries, but since I think they're called service berries, technically your tea berries might be the other
mhm,
name that's common here.
yeah. But learning to identify plants and fruits, berries, things like that, picking them, bringing them home, eating them, easy skill. And it gets you out there, and you can lead those into other things. So uh, take your time to do any of these things, but it's easy enough once you start to think of the little things you can do for the day. Little day trips can always be fun. It's easy to fill your day with them. Um, you guys mentioned shooting earlier. I didn't. Every time I've gone the last little times with you guys, I've always taken some kind of slingshot
Yeah,
because it fits in your pocket. Little pocket shot or one of these different slingshots, and you take them with you. Dead easy. No one's going to hassle you about it. Um, I've started getting back into pellet guns and stuff. You can use those legally. Just kind of be careful who's watching, because the wrong person sees it, they assume it's a real rifle.
you can
Next
still
thing
get a
you know,
mischief charge if you're disturbing the public and causing chaos. Um,
that's just us being us.
yeah, I was gonna say I can do that with no firearms involved. Something I was going to say was just minor story to give kind of an overall idea. The last time Mel and I went out in a day trip is what I'm thinking of. We went out and we went to the spot in Elma. Think I sent you the place there, Ben, one time, and you were looking for a place that wasn't too far off the road to camp. Literally, it is less than 5 minutes off a traveled road. There's an Irving probably a minute and a half away from this location again. You pull in, you go down a little hill, and there's a campsite at the bottom of it. We went in really cold weather. I think it was minus 32 or minus 36 or something like that with the wind chill. We decided we were going to practice some cold skills. And it wasn't much. We made a fire, of course, realized how difficult that can be when you have wind and your hands start getting numb and things like that. Then we made some spots to sit because if we just sat in the ground was way too cold to sit on. So now we had to harvest some spruce boughs, fir boughs, things like that. Made a place to sit down. Made a little windbreak out of some wood, and I think we made lemon ginger tea or something like that. It was definitely ginger and potentially lemongrass or lemon balm or something like that. It was plants we had and some ginger root that we had bought from a store. But that was the whole thing was let's go in, let's have a tea, but be comfortable. What did that involve? We had to make the fire, yada yada yada, everything we talked about. It took the entire day. We dang near froze to death a couple times, but we're only like literally 25 feet from the car, so no real risk. And we learned a ton of stuff. You know what I mean? We practiced a ton of skills there.
Yeah. So it's
Pal, you're good to take non-restricted. Okay. Red Bear, as long as you have a pal, you're good to take a non-restricted anytime you go into the woods. In my opinion, you'd be silly not to with all the big cats and bears out here. Which, once again, that's kind of a thing. Depending on your location, there's going to be some other animals that potentially will be more hazard than what we have here in Nova Scotia. The most hazardous thing I can think of would be a black bear or coyotes. And that's our apex predators for for our little province. Black bears generally are pretty timid. Coyotes generally will stay away from you for the most part. There's exceptions to every rule, so if you hear coyotes wandering around and stuff like that, don't assume you're automatically safe. Don't go poking your head into black bear dens. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying generally we don't have much problems with them over here.
no.
But yeah,
So
cougars are going to be interesting for you, Ben.
what?
I said cougars are going to be an interesting change for you, Ben.
Cougars are always looking for me. So I couldn't help it.
I get you.
Hmm?
I said I get you. I was thinking it before the words were out, but
You set me up. I'm gonna take it.
I totally set you up.
But yeah, no. I hope to spend a bit of time in BC in the next few little while. So I'm gonna check that stuff out. But no, I think we've spent close to an hour on this. I think we've really highlighted that you don't need to go out for a multi-day trip to do bushcrafting. You can do tons of stuff on simple trips. Most of what we've mentioned, you can do literally in a 15-minute to an hour trip, or you can stretch it out to a whole day. It doesn't take long to even and if you're not carrying your tent, your hammock, your sleeping bag, you can go with a pretty small bag.
Mm-hmm.
And it means it's pretty discreet. You can easily toss something in the back seat of a car, the back of a bicycle, back of an ATV. Just go out and since you're planning on being home that night. I would recommend if you're going to go more than a couple of minutes from your vehicle, just take a few basic survival things just in case something happens and you don't make it back to your vehicle before it gets too dark. It's happened with guys doing GPS over the years where someone says, I'm only going in 500 yards. I'll be back in 10 minutes. And next thing you know, he spends the night because he got turned around. His GPS died, whatever. So it never hurts to have a small survival pack. And maybe that's something we'll do in a few episodes is just a basic survival pack, something that you can carry in a day pouch or, something pretty easy. I know you have a few.
Yeah, I was gonna say my basic pack I take with me even when I'm hunting. Even if I can see my truck, I keep it with me because if I actually, decide to take some game and I gotta go tracking it, the last thing I'm gonna do is walk back to the truck first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I will forget to walk back to the truck first. and
Oh
then
yeah.
your adrenaline's up and stuff like that. You start tracking and blood trailing. It's pretty easy to get turned around and realize I really wasn't paying attention on my way in.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well,
yeah, we're at
I'm pretty
15
well done.
minutes. I think we're good.
Yeah. I'm pretty well done. I've covered it. I'd love to hear you guys' ideas though. So if anyone has some other ideas of things you can do on day trips, please throw them out. We know that this list is by no means exhaustive, but I think we've covered quite the wide swath of things. And as we always say, get out there, have fun, enjoy yourselves, be safe.
Night, everybody. We'll see you next week.